All right, so we're looking at Thomas, and we're looking at these two particular questions, or rather sets of questions, because each question has a whole bunch of articles, and they're about truth and they're about falsity. And you notice that Thomas quotes a lot of different people: Augustine, who you read a little bit, Anselm, who we read on truth, and Aristotle. A few things that Aristotle said you might recognize in there, and then a lot of other people who you don't necessarily have to worry about when you're trying to work your way through this, but you might find interesting. And we're going to look at the first article in question 16 in its entirety, so you get a sense about how to process these kind of things. And then we'll jump around, through these different articles and look at some of his doctrines. So Thomas is introducing two terms right off the bat: whether truth exists in the intellect. So we saw that with Augustine, truth was something that was like outside of your mind, and your mind conformed to truth, right? You remember that from the Augustine on the free choice of the will? And we saw with the Anselm, there's all kinds of truth, and some of the truth is in your mind, and some of the truth is in your statements, some of it's in your will, some of it's in the very being of things. God himself is truth. It gets really complicated, doesn't it? Thomas is interested in, well, where is truth most? Where is its primary locus? So he's asking whether truth resides only in the intellect. And you notice he looks at objections. The objections are people saying, no, it's not just in the intellect. And the first one that he talks about is Augustine. So he says, it seems that truth does not reside only in the intellect, but rather in things. So truth is like out there in the world, and our minds then grasp the truth that's out in the world, and that's what makes our minds true. That sounds kind of like Augustine too, doesn't it? And he quotes Augustine, and he says, Augustine says, that is true which is seen. This doesn't work. It would follow that stones hidden in the bosom of the earth would not be true stones. So think about this for a minute. When you don't know about something that's going on, and let's say nobody else knows about it, not even the person who did it, let's say the person who did something forgets about it, is it still true? Like if I fill this cup up with kerosene, for example, and I leave it over here and I put it under the cupboard, and I know nobody ever looks down there because, it's, who would look underneath there? You could probably store anything you liked. Now ages pass, right? Marist becomes this old abandoned place, and there's still a cup of kerosene in there. I know the kerosene would evaporate. So let's say it's a bottle, right? Is it true that it's still there? Yes, right? You would say that. So Augustine says, stones hidden in the bosom of the earth, they're true stones. So, even though we don't see them, he said, he also condemns the following: that is true, which is as it appears to the knower who is willing and able to know. Because from this it would follow nothing would be true unless somebody could know it. So he defines truth, Augustine defines truth, that is true, which is. So it seems that truth is not so much in our minds, it's in the things out there. It's in the things themselves and the way that they're put together. Does this seem plausible? So hold on to that. Let's look at the next objection. It says, further, whatever is true by reason of truth. Okay, that makes sense. If then truth is only in the intellect, nothing will be true except insofar as it is understood. Because what does your intellect do? What's its activity? To understand things, right? But this is the error of the ancient philosophers, who said that whatever seems to be true is so. So mutual contradictories seem to be true as seen by different persons at the same time. So let's think about moral issues. Do we always agree about those? A lot of disagreement, right? That's why you avoid them at the dinner table sometimes, because you want to have a quiet, peaceable dinner, so you don't bring up, say, capital punishment or abortion or politics or things like that. Well, if truth is only in the intellect, then that means it's kind of up for grabs, somebody might say, right? If truth is only in your intellect and you disagree with me, then you've got a different truth than I have, don't you? So what you believe is true and what I believe is true, But that can't be overall true, can it? That doesn't make sense. So it must not be just in the intellect. Let's look at the third one now. He says, that on account of which a thing is so is itself more so. This is a little complicated here. This is a metaphysical principle. That on account of which a thing is so. What makes a thing be what it is, the cause of the thing, must be more that way than something else. And I'll use a really easy example that Thomas would probably like. Think about fire and heating, right? What do we use fire to do? Think about your stove, if you have a gas stove. Cook things. And how hot is the fire, do you think? What's that?
Pretty hot.
Pretty hot, yeah. That's, you know, what if we had to like pick degrees? I'm not sure what propane burns at, but
300 some odd degrees Fahrenheit.
it's got to be more than that, I think. Paper burns at like 451, we know.
Not really all that much.
Okay.
On your very high setting, you could probably get up to 4, but
Well, you can get the stuff in your pan to get pretty hot too, right? It's not as hot as the fire itself. And then the heat in the pan is being communicated from the fire. The fire is the cause. And you know, there's some problems with this analogy, I know, but just go with me on this. So the fire itself is the cause of the heat. It embodies heat. It gives off heat. And the fire is more so that. It's more hot than the steak, well, than the pan, which is communicating heat to the steak or the stir fry or mac and cheese or whatever it is that you're cooking, right? I don't know, what do you guys like to cook in your pans? Mac and cheese used to be the staple, or ramen, I suppose. You know? What do you guys eat? Steak? Okay. You guys have a good life then. So you get the idea. That on account of which a thing is so is itself more so, as is evident from the philosopher, he means Aristotle. But it is from the fact that a thing is or is not, so something out in the world, that our thought or our word is true or false. So truth, again, is out there in the world. It's out there in things, not in the intellect. So these are some pretty good arguments, some pretty robust arguments against truth being in the intellect, aren't they? Then he says, on the contrary, the philosopher says, Aristotle says, the true and false reside not in things but in the intellect. Now notice, what is he doing there? I'll read it to you one more time. On the contrary, the philosopher says, the true and the false reside not in things but in the intellect. Yeah.
kind of just flips the situation around.
Okay, so structurally that's what he's doing. What is he doing just in this thing?
Use one of their own arguments like against them, like they quoted Aristotle and he just quoted them back.
Yeah, now that's the key term. He just quotes Aristotle. He says, well, Aristotle says, blah, 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 right? And does that necessarily mean that it's right? I mean, Aristotle could be wrong about a lot of things. I know lots of people who like to quote people all the time, and oftentimes they're dead wrong. Simply saying, well, Plato said, that doesn't solve an argument, and that doesn't rebut good arguments that have been made so far. What it shows you, though, is there's a possibility of looking at it a different way. So now we're kind of opening up the field. So let's look at now the I answer that. This is where Thomas is actually telling you, here's what I think about this. It says, as the good denotes that towards which the appetite tends, so the true denotes that towards which the intellect tends. Now he's already made it more complicated, hasn't he? So when you're reading this for the first time, you're probably like, okay, I get what these three arguments are about. How is this some sort of response to these three arguments? They weren't talking about the good at all, so why are you talking about that? Are you just rambling, Thomas? Well, no, there's a point to this. So it says, as the good denotes that towards which the appetite tends, so the true denotes that towards which the intellect tends. What is that? That's a analogy, isn't it? This is related in this way. These things are related in this way. So let's actually put this on the board and think this through. So we've got appetite, and that tends towards the good. And we have the intellect, And that denotes that's attracted to the truth. And when you see appetite, think desire. Because he doesn't just mean your appetite like your hunger. He means your desire for anything. So if you have an appetite for wealth, you know, that's a desire for wealth. If you have an appetite for security, appetite for sleep, appetite for all sorts of things, that's desire for those things. So desire tends towards the good, right? That's what determines desire. Do you desire bad things that you actually know are bad? No, you desire bad things sometimes, but you think that they're good when you're desiring them, or you think something about them is good, and that's what you desire. Likewise, the intellect is the reason why you have it is to be directed to truth. That's why, you know, you have a brain, the kind of brain that you do. We're able to grasp things as being true. You know, think about being here at Marist again. Are you in your classes to learn true things or false things? Hopefully true things, right? And if your instructor teaches you false things, how do you feel? Screwed? Angry, yeah. I mean, you should feel angry, because the whole point of education is to orient intellects to what is true. So if somebody's giving you a bunch of false stuff, you should be like, this is not what education is supposed to be about. You're depriving my intellect of the truth. Try saying that in some class sometime to a professor. So he says, now there's a difference between the appetite and the intellect, or any knowledge whatsoever. Knowledge is according as the thing known is in the knower. So the intellect is about the true, and this is about the thing. This is about the knower, right? You're the one who actually knows things. And when you know something, Thomas thinks, you have kind of something like a copy of the thing that you're knowing in your mind. And we don't have to try to spell this out in too great detail. There's, you know, this gets very complicated very quickly. What do you mean by a copy? Like a photographic copy? You know, how does that work for things like freedom or democracy or things like that? Thomas thinks that you grasp the essence of the thing with your intellect. And sometimes, you know, you get it right, sometimes you don't. But when you get it right, then you actually have kind of like a copy of it in your mind. What about appetite? Does the person who's desiring something already have the thing that they desire? No, we desire things because we don't have them, don't we? If I want to drink of water, once I'm actually drinking the water, I probably don't want to drink the water anymore, right? My thirst has been satisfied. So there's a dissimilarity here. The copy, there's a sort of a copy that's possessed here. And he says, so the term of the appetite, namely good, is in the object. It's over here. It's on this side for appetite. Whereas the term of the intellect is in the intellect itself. So that's over here. So there's kind of a dissimilarity. So he says, the appetite itself is called good if the object is good. Do you have any bad desires? Any desires that you recognize as, you know, being for things that are not particularly good for you? I'm sure you do, right? Yeah.
Like smoking count? We know.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you're a smoker, like, it's hard to not be reminded of that because everybody around you wants to, you know, tell you that you should quit. You know, you have a desire to smoke, and you take a puff, and it feels good, and you're like, man, I shouldn't be doing this, right? Is that a good or bad appetite? You would say it's a bad appetite because the object itself is bad, right? If you have a desire to, here's a common situation. Your best friend has a very attractive, you know, boyfriend, girlfriend. They seem to be interested in you. You're placed alone together, you know, over a weekend. They actually come out and suggest, hey, you know, did you ever think about if we, you know, got together? And, you know, you think to yourself, I shouldn't do this, right? But you have a desire to. We call that desire bad because the thing itself would be bad, right? sleeping with your best friend's boyfriend, girlfriend, we generally see that as a bad thing, right? Now, what about the intellect? He says, the true in the intellect is, so far as it is conformed to the object understood. The aspect of the true passes from the intellect to the object understood. So the intellect, the truth in the intellect makes the thing itself true. He says, a thing may be understood in relation to an intellect either essentially or accidentally. I'm going to actually skip through that fairly quickly because we don't have that much time. But where do you think truth ultimately would reside then? So it's in intellects. Now you have an intellect, right? Do you ever get things wrong though? Do you have to discover things along the way? So that's why it seems to you that the true is in the things, and then your intellect just sort of like maps onto it, and your intellect is true insofar as it maps onto the things. Well, that's because there's another intellect, Thomas would say, that's actually understanding all of this and making it the way it is. And what we would call the truth of things. This is really a key thing for Thomas, for understanding the whole schema. God understands everything. God has the truth of everything in his mind because he made everything. So it's a theological kind of framework, right? And because of that, those things have their natures, they have their essences, they have the way they are, and we're able to grasp them. We're able to grasp what it is that makes them what they are, their being, and therefore we have truth in our intellect. And you can tell that our truth is more true when it actually maps onto, let's call it the super truth, right? The super truth that's in the divine mind. Truth with no mixture of falsity whatsoever. Now, do any of you know what God's mind is like offhand? I don't. But we can know a little bit about it because it created all these different things, and so when we're getting things right, our mind is closer to the way that God sees things. And we could ask ourselves, I suppose, at certain points, am I seeing things in any way similar to how God might see it? And if the answer is no, then we're probably wrong, according to Thomas. Now let's look at these objections, or his responses to the objections. He says, Augustine is talking about the truth of things and excludes from the notion of this truth in relation to our intellect. For what is accidental is excluded from every definition. So now we want to go back to think about essential and accidental. He says, we don't judge of a thing by what is in it accidentally, but what is in it essentially. So everything is understood to be true absolutely so far it is related to the intellect from which it depends, which is ultimately the divine mind, not our minds. Think about it this way. He gives you an analogy. A house is said to be true that expresses the likeness of the form in the architect's mind, right? So when you're building something, bless you, how many of you had the intention at one time of drawing or painting or sculpting or doing something artistic or maybe musical, and you felt like you had this in you and you were trying to communicate it out onto paper or canvas, and it just didn't come off, and you felt very frustrated as a result? Like you could see it in your mind, or you could hear what it was that you were trying to make as far as sound, and it just did not go, right? The image in your mind and the thing out there, the thing is untrue because it doesn't conform to the image in your mind. Now, it didn't happen because of your own lack of skill, or my own lack of skill in these cases. Would that happen with God? No, I mean, he's God, so presumably if he wants something to be a certain way, he makes it that way. Words are said to be true so far as they are the signs of the truth in the intellect. Have you ever had any problem expressing yourself? Yeah, I think so. You get a paper back and the teacher's like, this is unclear. And you're like, I thought I knew what I was saying, and you actually didn't perhaps know what you were saying. You just didn't communicate it that well. Your words were lacking truth because they didn't map onto what was in your mind. So he says, In the same way, natural things are said to be true insofar as they express the likeness of the species that is in the divine mind. A stone is called true, which possesses the nature proper to a stone. So truth resides primarily in the intellect, in God's intellect, and in our intellect. Secondarily, in things according as they are related to the intellect. Now, to objection 2, he says, the ancient philosophers held that the species of natural things did not proceed from any intellect, but were produced by chance. They saw as truth implies relation to intellect, they are compelled to base the truth of things on their relation to our intellect. So now think about this, if the world is just completely up to chance, if it's inexplicable, if the things in the world are just jumbled together in any way whatsoever, then the only place that you're going to be able to have truth is in individual human beings' intellects, right? That's the only thing you're going to be able to rely on. When we get to Descartes next week, if you can doubt whether everything is the way that you're experiencing it, then maybe you only have truth over here. That gets to be kind of a scary proposition. You'll see why when we get to that, so I'm going to move ahead. And then he says, reply to objection 3, although the truth of our intellect is caused by the thing, it's not necessary that truth should be there primarily, any more than that health should be primarily in medicine rather than in the animal. For the virtue of medicine and not its health is the cause of health. In the same way, the being of the thing exists, the thing is the way it is. The being of the thing, not its truth, is the cause of truth in the intellect. When you are grasping things truly, you are grasping things the way that they are, right? That is the being of the thing. The truth of the thing is something not separate but different from the being of the thing, and that comes from you actually being a knower. So in a way, if we take God out of the picture, in a way, you are what makes things true. Your knowing them, or your thinking about them, is what makes them true. Things out in the world, cups don't have the capacity to make things true. You do. Kind of an interesting idea, isn't it? To wrap your head around. Let's move on a bit. I'm actually going to skip over the Article 2, whether truth resides only in the intellect composing and dividing. When you see that term composing and dividing, this is all I want to say about it. We don't use those terms. We would say things like analyzing and synthesizing, comparing and contrasting, the sort of things that you are used to doing in papers, right? Your mind is constantly doing that with its environment, isn't it? You're always making comparisons. You're always breaking things down. You're always putting things together, putting things in frameworks. Those are all things that generate truth in your intellect, Thomas would say. Those are all ways in which you're understanding the world. You may not realize this because you're so good at it that you can do it without even necessarily thinking about it. If you had to think about it all the time, you'd never get anywhere. You'd never get out of your dorm room. Let's move ahead to Article 4. He says, whether good is logically prior to the truth. So now, once again, we're talking about goodness and truth. What does he mean by logically prior? What do you think that means? That's kind of a hard thing to wrap your head around, too. One thing is, if something is prior to another thing, in time, what does that mean? Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, if something was true only if it was good.
Okay, yeah. So you're saying that that would be what it is for goodness to be logically prior to truth? Yeah. Now, prior means before, right? If you get arrested, they'll look at your prior record, and you might not, probably most of you don't have any, which is good. Logically prior means that not in time, but in the way that we think about things, it has to come before it. So how does our mind, when we're looking at the world, when we're taking things in and we're thinking about them, what are we grasping first? How are we experiencing and understanding things first. And this takes a little bit of, turning our attention away from the distractions of every day and actually like paying close attention to how we actually think about things, how we actually do experience things. Thomas says, the good and the true are convertible with being. That means that anything that is good is a being. Anything that is being is good, to a certain extent. They differ logically. It's not the same thing to have being as to be good or to be true. They're not identical logically. So he says, in this manner the true, speaking absolutely, is prior to good for two reasons. Why? Well, the first reason is, he says the truth is more closely related to being. I didn't put being on here, but here's the thing about things. The very fact that they are things at all means that they have being. And they not only have being, they not only exist, they have the kind of being that they are. This is a piece of chalk, right? That's its being. That's a desk, yeah. That's a camera. Over there's a pen. These are all beings. They all have being, and they all have determinate being. They have the way in which they are being. Where are we getting truth from? By grasping the nature of the thing. By grasping, if I say this is a piece of chalk, why is that a true statement? Because there actually is a piece of chalk there, right? If I do this now. This is a piece of chalk. True or false? What makes it false?
It doesn't have the properties of chalk.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, you actually sort of like leaped ahead to, first you could have said, well, it's not a piece of chalk at all, it's a pen, right? But what does that mean? It doesn't have those properties. It doesn't have the essential nature of chalk. Yeah?
So is that where the saying, if it walks like a dog, the duck sounds like a duck, it must be a duck?
Not necessarily. There could be things that are imitating the nature of a duck, right? But we're able to recognize them as being duck-like because we grasp what it means to be a duck. So, what are some examples of duck-like things that aren't real ducks? Robot decoys, cartoons about Huey, Dewey, Louie, and Uncle Scrooge. Imagine, people like to do the duck, the duck bill thing. There's a lot of memes making fun of that when they take a photo of themselves for Facebook. Now imagine somebody doing a video where it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck. Okay, so they look like a duck because they've done the thing, right? And they're walking like a duck, right? And they're also saying quack, quack at the same time, right? They're not a duck, obviously, right? And you recognize that they're not a duck. He talks about things like that a little bit further in. What is it when we're thinking about movies, for example? He doesn't talk about movies because they didn't have movies. But what is it when we're talking about artistic representations? In a certain sense, they're false, right? But in a certain sense, they're true because the things that are being depicted, we're able to grasp those based on what they're supposed to be. But I don't think that we'll get to that necessarily. So back to goodness and the truth. So the true is based on what things actually are, their being. Goodness, he says, true is more closely related to being than is good. For the true regards being itself simply and immediately, just what things are. It doesn't make any sort of value judgments about the things, you might say, to use very modern language. Whereas the good, when you grasp something as good, you're making a value judgment, aren't you? And that's not saying that you're not actually getting the thing as it is, but you're at a certain kind of distance from it compared to its truth. So let's consider this. This is a good example. This is not something that you would automatically consider a good thing, is it? It's pretty much a neutral thing. When would this be a good for you?
You have to communicate.
Very good, yeah. Or if you want to write a nasty message on the sidewalk to somebody, or if you want to chalk somebody's tire because you're You're going to give them 2 hours to park, and then you're going to give them a ticket. It's only within certain contexts that this would become good for us. Now let's think about things that we do tend to see as goods for us. Food, for example, right? You go into the cafeteria, you walk in, you're there for a purpose. It may be, you want to see your friends and socialize and kill some time, but what are you really there to do? Yeah, eat, which means get yourself some food, because you can't just like walk in and just start eating, right? You have to get a plate. And so you go and you pick something out, and you look at it. And let's say it's, what would be a dish that could be kind of iffy, kind of off? You go to the pasta bar, right? And you're having them cook the pasta thing for you, and they usually have Alfredo there, right? What color should Alfredo be?
White.
Yeah. Now, if the Alfredo was grayish, would that be good or bad? Yeah, I wouldn't eat the grayish Alfredo sauce. I'd wonder what's in it. Now, you grasp the being of the thing. This is a matter of the senses, right? You're looking at it. Let's say it also smells off. Like it smells like, I don't know, kind of chemically, right? And not the way it should smell. Alfredo should smell kind of buttery and the Parmesan cheese and stuff like that. So you grasp this with your senses. You grasp the being of the thing, and you tell yourself, that's not really Alfredo sauce. I don't know what you made there, but it's not Alfredo sauce. That you get right away, Thomas would say. You perceive it as a good, and then you're able to sort of pull yourself back from it and say, no, this would be bad for me to eat even though I'm hungry, because your attachment or your apprehension of the goodness of things is not quite as immediate as your grasp of the truth of things is, Thomas would say. The other thing that he says is knowledge naturally precedes appetite. You can't desire things unless you, in a certain sense, know them, right? So think about things that you've desired in your lifetime. What was your biggest desire when you were a kid? Yeah. Candy? Allowance. Why? So you'd probably buy candy. And then something happened when you were, like in between 9 and 14, and what was that? Girls? Yeah. Not everybody discovered girls. What happened to the girls in the class? Right? When you were girls?
You got rid of those childhood things like Barbies or,
Not necessarily. I know a lot of people who keep that stuff forever. We go through, adolescence begins, right? We go through puberty, and what happens there? We become aware of new desires. We start looking, when you say you discovered girls, right? And that's a good way to put it. Because before, maybe you didn't want to play with girls if you're a boy because, we kind of separate things up. I don't know how it was at your school. Everyone's got different experiences. But you don't grasp looking at the people that you're attracted to. You don't grasp that until you start seeing them as potential mates. And something is going on in your body, and that's what's making you now see things differently. But once that happens, you grasp their being differently, and then you can start having desire for them. And at first it's very confusing, right? That's why they have all those books for you in health class and stuff like that. Your body's going to be going through changes. You're going to be having new feelings. They're talking about desire. And now you've been living with that for a while. And I'm willing to bet that quite a few of you, when you were in middle school, high school, you may have been into your studies, but a lot of it was probably in part because you're trying to please people, and you want to stay in your parents' good graces, and get out of the school and move on to college and stuff like that. Is it a little bit different for you now that you're able to choose your own course of study, where you're going to be going? Are you finding yourself more interested in whatever it is that you're studying? You see that as a good, and you desire it. You want to pursue it. Whatever it is that counts as knowledge in that field, you want to absorb that. You may not care about your core classes. I can understand that. I'm not advocating that, but there's something that attracts you, isn't there? And could you be attracted to that if you didn't know about it? First, you have to have grasp of something the way it is. Then you can begin to desire it. So, fashion, for example, right? Imagine that you had grown up in a world where, how would we eliminate that? No fashion magazines, no fashion shows. Nobody ever talked about it. We all wore this the entire time, right? Brown pants and gray sweaters, like a uniform. Pretty drab, isn't it? Would you have the same desire for studying fashion that you do? For making things differently? It might be like a reaction. It's like, I just wish something wasn't gray, right? But that's kind of inchoate. It's hard to put your finger on. I bet that if we asked you to, and I brought you up here at the board, you could tell us about what things you would like to actually produce. You probably actually have plates, I'm guessing, and projects that you've done to some degree. And I understand, because my daughter actually is doing that sort of thing. She's into that. That's why I'm hoping she might actually go here to Marist. We have to know something, at least to some degree, before we can desire it. And we have to know what it is before we can desire it, Thomas would say. So, in a way, truth is prior to goodness for Thomas Aquinas. I'm going to skip over the is God truth bit, and let's look at Article 6 now. Is there only one truth according to which all things are true? This is something that Anselm said in the on truth, wasn't it? Very, very close to the end. He said there's one big truth, and truth is sort of like time. We tend to think of things like the time of this class, for example. But this class is within time itself, isn't it? And so all truths, according to Anselm, are within truth itself, which turns out to be God in this sort of view. So what does Thomas say? This is pretty typical Thomas. He says, in one sense, truth, whereby all things are true, is one. In another sense, it's not. So he's saying, well, yes and no. And he actually considers Anselm here. He says, in proof of which we must consider that when anything is predicated of many things univocably, that means whenever we say something, like for instance duck, right? Whenever we say duck univocally, which means meaning the same thing each time, then it's found in each of them according to its proper nature. So let's use duck again. We use duck in what Thomas would call equivocal and analogical ways. So there's a sports team, the Ducks, right? It's a hockey team. Where do they play from? Anaheim. Okay. So they're not ducks. The guys out there, they have, I suppose a duck on their jersey, but they're not actually ducks. They couldn't be, because only human beings can play hockey, right? The ducks in Walt Disney movies, if they existed, they would be ducks, but really they'd be very strange ducks, because what's something they do that ducks don't do? Talk, yeah, that's pretty important, isn't it? Ducks do talk to each other. They talk to each other by going quack, quack, and they kind of hiss at each other too sometimes. They're kind of, they have a pecking order, I think, a little bit. Anything that you want to call a duck and mean the same thing has to be of that species. And we can have all sorts of other things, robot decoys that walk around and look like them, but that's not really a duck in the same sense. That doesn't mean you can't call it a duck. Or here's another example. Yeah?
Since we're using duck, what about Howard the Duck?
Well, he's like a Disney duck, right?
No, Howard the Duck was the old 80s movie where he got kicked out of his universe into Earth.
Same sort of deal. He's a fictional character, and he talks and all that. It'd be the same thing as the Disney ducks.
Oh.
Well, let's consider a case where we have a much weaker connection, just so you see what the opposite of univocal is with equivocal. If you go to Wisconsin Dells, and I think they also have something a lot like this in Jersey somewhere, you can ride on these vehicles that are called ducks. Any of you know what these are? Yeah, old World War II amphibious military vehicles that were used for landing troops and material, like at D-Day. And now they, they've adapted them to civilian use, and they've got wheels on them, and they have like a propeller, so they can go on either land or sea. I think they have a weird transmission that allows them to shift back and forth to them, and they're still running, even though it's like after more than half a century later. Now, why are they called ducks? Because they're kind of like ducks in a certain way. What's the one way in which they're like ducks? Ducks can walk around on land, and ducks can go in the water. That's a pretty loose similarity, isn't it? You could call them geese if you wanted to. You could. Are there other animals that we could think of that aren't birds that go in and out of the water? Crocodiles. They actually are a bit more like crocodiles in that they're long, right, and tough. But we don't call them crocodiles. We call them ducks, and it's just sort of random that we picked that term. Yeah.
There's also the acronym that described the truck.
Oh, okay. And acronyms would be, although they probably were attracted to the acronym in part, so they can make it duck. Acronym is like letters that stand for things. So he says, when anything is predicated of many things analogically, what do we mean by that? Well, like Howard the Duck would be analogical because he looks a lot like a duck. He's got the same shape. Presumably he has duck-like desires, I guess. It's been a long time since I've seen that. Uncle Scrooge is less duck-like in a way in that he's so attracted to gold, and ordinary ducks aren't very attracted to gold, are they? Maybe shiny things, I don't know. But anything is predicated of many things analogically. It is found in only one of them according to its proper nature, and from this the rest are denominated. So what does he mean? This is all fancy language. When we have this analogical relation, first you have to understand the truth of the actual thing, the duck, the species, and then you can start comparing all sorts of other things to it. So he uses the example of healthiness. Healthiness is predicated of an animal that's healthy, of urine, because back then that was a big thing for their medical knowledge. We still do it somewhat today, and of medicine. Not that health is only in the animal, but health is primarily in the animal, or you. When we talk about health, we primarily mean what's in you. The medicine by itself doesn't do any good if you're dead, right? The medicine can be as healthy as you like, or a diet can be as healthy as you like, but if all the human beings are dead, we don't care. The whole point of them is to make human beings healthy, right? That's where the primary meaning resides. And we can talk about medicine as being healthy because it produces health, or it prevents us from losing health. Or a diet we can talk about as healthy because it produces health. We can say a diet is unhealthy because it damages health. Think about all the different tests that you have to take when you go to the doctor. More often they take your blood than urine. I guess back in medieval times they must have taken urine more often. But you go in and what else do? They look at your tongue, and they get the scope and look in your ears and your eyes. Those are all signs of health, right? They listen to your heart. Heartbeat sounds good. Your heart is healthy, at least as far as we know. So that's analogically connected. So he says, although health is neither in medicine nor in urine, yet in either there is something whereby the one causes and the other indicates health. Now, we have said that truth resides primarily in the intellect and secondarily in things, accordingly as they are related to the divine intellect. If therefore we speak of truth as it exists in the intellect according to its proper nature, remember the question here is there one single truth or are there multiple truths? If we're talking about it in the primary sense, each one of you has an intellect, right? There's truth in your intellect, there's truth in your intellect, there's truth in your intellect. Do you have what's in his intellect? No, you've got your own mind, right? We're not all one big hive brain kind of thing, thank God. You're not reading my mind right now, I hope. Are you? I'm not reading yours, I can tell you that, because I can barely keep track of my own thoughts, So if we're talking about it in that sense, in the primary sense, no, truth is multiple. It's all over the place. But if we're talking about it as it is in things, then all things are true by one primary truth. And what's that primary truth? Well, this truth over here. The truth that's in the mind of God, who grasps, understands all the things, grasps the entire universe as it is. And also, presumably, aren't we also things in the universe? You and me? So it's not like God's mind would be cut off from our mind. Our minds would also be some things that God would know. That's why, he's even, some people are comparing him to Santa Claus in that, Santa Claus sees you when you're sleeping, knows when you're awake, knows when you've been bad or good, right? God even knows more than that. Knows what you're thinking, why you're thinking, because he knows everything. So if we're talking about truth in that sense, which Thomas notes is not the primary sense, then truth is one, because it encompasses everything else. God would even know about our truth and our falsity in our mind. Yeah.
But what if you don't believe in the whole God?
So there's two answers to that. If what you're asking is, what if this is actually correct and an individual person doesn't believe in God, then God knows that person doesn't believe in God. And it doesn't make any difference that the person doesn't believe in God,
No, what if, let's just say...
if you take God out of the picture, is that what you're asking? That's a deeper question. If you have the kind of viewpoint that Thomas does, and you take God out of the picture, I was thinking about this on the way here, then we would be left with just things over here, right? And there would be no one truth that makes all the things over here in being true. And we might not even be able to be sure about this stuff.
Is this all perspective?
What's that?
Wouldn't it be all perspective?
Yes, very good. Once you take God out of the Thomistic picture, it all becomes a matter of individual, or we could all be on the same page because I'm the boss and I make us all think the same thing, because if we don't, we're going to have social disorder. But that would only be locally true, right? If you take God out, and this happens for a lot of different philosophical things, if you take God out of the picture of this, where he doesn't seem to be doing an awful lot, if you take him out of the picture, we're all left in our own sort of individual bubbles. So, and that's a very deep problem compared to the question of, well, I just don't believe he exists, but he believes that I exist, and he knows that I exist, right? Yeah.
Ooh, when it kind of move towards true forms, like an absolute, not you have an idea, something would be an absolute being of that thing, the person.
Yeah. Now here's. Yeah, I see where you're going with this. Here's the thing. If you take God out of the picture and you still want to have something like what he's affording you, you better find something else to put in there. So Plato's forms maybe could do that kind of thing. Or maybe you come up with, well, science will take the place of this. Or, just nature by itself does this. Or you turn God into nature the way somebody like Spinoza, who we're not going to read, does. Hegel, to a certain extent, too, does that. That's a way to try to get around that. And this is just a historical note. Do you know why people had to do that? Because this idea of God that we had more or less well established in the Middle Ages, by the middle of the modern period, people are saying, yeah, I don't believe in this anymore. And it became widespread in society, so that somebody like Nietzsche at the end could say God is dead, not meaning that there was an actual God who lived and then died, but that the idea of God that was providing us the ground for the truth of beings, which we were taking in, had disappeared. We'd lost faith in it. And once that happened, then it's all up for grabs, according to somebody like Nietzsche. So, that's actually a good place to end, I think. Good questions.